Welcome to another episode of the 5enses podcast. I'm your host, Robert Zinni, and today I'm sitting down with Martha Baden, who is the public service manager at the Prescott Library. How are you doing, Martha?
I'm just fine. Thank you for asking.
No problem.
I'm smiling.
Yeah. Right. It's hard sometimes
It
to
is.
have facial recognition with these masks on, but I'm learning the etiquette of the pandemic.
Yep.
How about you?
Yep, we're getting there.
Right. So, Martha, you are here to talk about the Smithsonian exhibition that we will be lucky to have at the Prescott Library called Voices and Votes, Democracy in America. And so I was wondering, what is the exhibition and how did Prescott, Arizona get selected to have this national exhibition come to our town?
Yeah, it's an exciting opportunity for us. We're thrilled and honored to have it. It is a traveling exhibition, and it is brought to us through the Smithsonian Museum. They have a program called Museum on Main Street, or MOMS, and they sponsor exhibits that are usually spinoffs of broader Smithsonian exhibits that are based in Washington, and they visit smaller, usually rural areas in towns around the country. We went through a pretty rigorous application process for it, and I think one of the appeals for Arizona Humanities, it's a partnership between the Smithsonian and Arizona Humanities Council, which is a wonderful idea because their expertise is programming and speakers and presenters and local knowledge. So I think one of the strengths is we serve a pretty large rural population, even though we are a city and a sort of small city, but people from Yarnell, from Paulden, from Dewey Humboldt, they often come to Prescott Public Library, and we saw it as an opportunity to really reach out to those rural areas. I think the other reason that maybe we were a good choice for this is Prescott has a great and long history of democratic activism and voting movements, and so we had the opportunity to present that. So we're excited about it. It's actually the exhibit arrived today. 16 ginormous crates came off a moving van into the library. It'll all be packed up again at the end of July and sent off to the next stop, which is Mojave County Community College, and then on to several other sites throughout Arizona. But because of the pandemic, we are one of the first in the country to get the exhibit.
Nice.
Yep.
So it's called Voices and Votes, Democracy in America. So what are some of the topics and themes that we'll be able to look and observe through the exhibition?
It begins really with the backstory, how democracy came to be in this country, how it really was an offshoot of people who wanted to have their voices heard, and so from there came our ability to exercise our right to vote in this country. So the first section is kind of a little bit of history in that way. But what I love about the exhibit is each section asks some pretty challenging questions of us, tying things back to contemporary politics, contemporary voting, and ways that we can make our voices heard in a democracy, and some of the challenges to our democracy. So the first section is the backstory. There is a section on the machinery of democracy, which is, political campaigns and parties and lobbying and that kind of thing. There's a wonderful section on voices, which really addresses the voices that are heard and voices that are not heard in our democracy, and the challenges that we face there. And then Beyond the Ballot, which I think is a wonderful one, it's all about the First Amendment and the part that protests and demonstration play. So you can see it's a really timely exhibit.
Very
and
timely.
Yeah, we're seeing, if this was coming out in another 5 years, I'm sure that the Black Lives Matter protests would be a part of this exhibit. So.
Right, yeah, because that is history now. And it's really wonderful that the Smithsonian is bringing this traveling exhibition to rural communities to show not only the importance of democracy, but then the behind the scenes of what's actually a part of being a democracy and the, like you said, the machinery of it too. And then when we're talking about voices, I really like what you're saying about in a democracy, even like history. Usually, the winners get the right history, but then since the postmodernism movement in the '60s, we've had more minority voices, or let's say the casualties of war voices heard. So, what are some of these unsung voices that will be on display?
Well, I think there's a large part of the display that addresses the civil rights movement.
Okay.
And in the last century, some of the Native American and their right to vote and their struggle for their right to vote. Of course, this is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, and so there's a large portion of it to talk about women's suffrage. And one of the things that we have the great pleasure of doing, that was an expectation for the exhibit, is to mount a local exhibit that really addresses the way voices and votes happen in our town and in our area. And so it was wonderful for us to discover how many activists were from Prescott and really changed the fabric of life in Arizona, Prescott and Arizona. For instance, Frances Munns, prominent suffragette, and really enabled women voters in Arizona to have the right to vote 8 years before it was passed nationally.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a nice little preview for those who are listening. What are you looking forward to with this exhibition?
I think I'm really looking forward to, and I hope I'm not putting the words in the mouths of the Smithsonian, but I think, museums in the past have been considered by some to be static and just, you're an observer. This one's very interactive. There's the sounds of protest music. There's interviews with people about their voting experiences. We invite people to share their voting experiences through their website, where you can answer some questions yourself, and those will be recorded and posted on the site. So I think I'm really looking forward to this being an opportunity for people to look at what is such a important, valuable part of being an American citizen and explore it a little, challenge ourselves to think about it through all of these interactive pieces. It's not a static display at all. And so I think I look forward to the conversations that will be started and the knowledge gain, insights gained to the whole democratic experiment, which is what the original display in Washington was called, A Leap of Faith, Democracy in America. So
right. I think now in 2020 we kind of seem to forget that we are living in an experiment, because I think what makes America great is that it was the first time ever that we had a free government elected by the people, at least since the Greek civilization. But exhibitions like this kind of like make me proud that we still have a long way to go in this country, and that it's nice to be reminded that freedom isn't free, and you have a part in this active citizenry, if you will. Right.
In fact, I think one of the questions is that a responsibility of citizenship to continue to ask those questions.
Exactly, right? Ask the tough questions, and like it's hard for some people to look at history that are just very tragic in American history, because sometimes we like to sweep it under the rug, but I think it makes our country greater when we can look at those movements and understand the unjust and the unfairity of what happened in the past, but it can only make us stronger in the future.
Right.
So that's great that this exhibition's coming in here. So you say it's not static like normal museums. So what can the audience experience with this interactive show?
Well, as I said, one thing is just the sense around. There's a lot of noise. There is a section with protest music, some with speeches, some with individual voices recounting their voting experiences. There are flip books you can handle and objects to see. So I think it really will be, and as I said, questions all along the way that you're challenged to ask. So I think that it will be something that will engage all the senses, could ask questions, challenge visitors to think more deeply about the citizenship that they have.
Nice. So, as people can notice us with masks, we're living in this pandemic. So what type of social distancing is the public library here in Prescott going to observe during this exhibition?
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because we want people to feel comfortable coming to the library for this. We thought long and hard, actually, about hosting it during this time, and we are one of the first in the country to do this. So what we've done, the original plan was for it to be on the floor of the library, and people could happen upon it and enter in. And what we've decided instead is to formalize it a little bit so that we can limit the occupancy, basically. It's a very large room. It will be housed in the Founder's Suite on the first floor of the library. So we're asking that people register ahead of time. They can do this by calling us or going to our website, and we'll make an appointment for them for an hour. And once they're finished there, they can then go to the second floor where we have our local exhibit, and that sort of will be there all the time. But for the Smithsonian exhibit, we are having limited entry. That's one way we're social distancing. We sort of have the arrows like you see in the grocery, one-way traffic. The other thing we're going to be doing is sanitizing in the high-touch areas every hour. So, and offering people who would consider wearing a mask if they don't have one. But we certainly encourage it. I think we want everyone to be safe and still have the opportunity, this wonderful opportunity. This was our one shot at this. So.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say is if there is anyone who's medically fragile, they should give us a call, and we can set up an appointment when the library is not open to the public and make sure they get to see it. So.
Okay. Excellent. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were talking about potentially like speakers. Is there a Zoom online aspect of the exhibition?
Yes. This was hard for us to let go because we had a very robust program schedule planned for the 6 weeks that the exhibit was with us, including we had hoped to have a community read and an author speak and everything. At this point, and we hope this will be an ongoing conversation, and we can resume some of that programming when times are better. But for now, we're having several wonderful speakers come and speak to an audience through Zoom. And I guess what I'd really like to stress with readers, listeners to your podcast, is that if you know someone who's afraid of technology or, it doesn't have a smartphone or a computer, you can phone call into Zoom. You can still participate, with a phone number. So the librarians are ready to walk you through that. We have iPads and hotspots to lend, and we would love to facilitate people participating. So
nice. That's excellent that you have speakers lined up, and it's I think Zoom is somewhat going to be woven into the fabric of our society now. Like the Back to the Future 2 is like actually happening, if you will. So before we go, I was wondering, where can our audience go find more information about the exhibition, and then what are your hours at the public library?
So the best place to go is to our website. We have a landing page for Voices and Votes. So that's prescottlibrary.info/voicesvotes. We'll have lots of information out there about it. And the hours of the library are a bit different now. We're Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 6. The exhibit will be open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 until 4. So just give us a chance to wind down the day and clean things up, get ready for the next day. But we really hope people, if there are any questions or interests or ideas, or folks need help accessing the website so they can tell their stories, just give us a call. Our librarians are standing by, ready to help. And that number's 777-1526.
Well, thank you for your time, Martha. It was a pleasure getting to know you and to hear about the Smithsonian exhibition, Voices and Votes, Democracy in America, which is from June 20th to July 26th at the public library here in Prescott.
That's right. Thank you so much.
For everybody listening out there, I encourage everybody to go to the library for this exhibition, learn a little bit more about American history that you may not know, and try to get a nice understanding of what does it mean to live in a voting, citizen-oriented country. Because again, we're not like every other country out there, and this is our kind of civic duty, if you will. So for more information, log on to 5enses, mag.com, like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget that 5 Senses is back in print.